shows. On the air since 1951. This is The Legend. 105.3, 95.3. WDXE.
Stan, I let it slip up on me there.
I was talking to you and it drew your attention away from what you were doing.
I let it slip up on me.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're here with Stan Pierchoski and Bulletproof Estate Planning. And of course, we have an expert in the house.
Oh,
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I don't know if I can. Don't put me on that pedestal, okay?
Well, I've been talking to you a while, and under my consideration, I think you seem to know what you're talking about when it comes to estate planning, and we've had lots of questions, and you've had lots of answers. So
good.
Deal. Hey, you ready for the holidays? Is what I want to know.
I am. I got this. These holidays are a little different for me. It seems like you asked me just a minute ago off mic if I had a good week, and I said sorta. And it's been a strange week for me.
Yeah.
My wife left town on Thursday of last week to go to Miami because my daughter was ready to have a baby.
I was going to ask you.
She still
about
has
that.
not had the baby.
Still no baby yet. Okay.
Yesterday was the actual due date, and nothing.
So we're still waiting.
Oh my! And I guess she went to the doctor, whoever they're dealing with, and everything's in perfect position. Child's upside down, ready to go.
Right.
Everything seems just right, and then they finish it off with, we know it's a boy, and it's like everything's just right whenever he's ready.
Whenever he's good to go, ready to launch, huh?
Maybe he can hear. When he's in the womb, maybe he can hear the news and stuff, and he's thinking, I don't know if I want to come out and deal with that stuff.
Oh wow!
I don't know, but
what a miracle, though, huh?
Yeah, it is, and I've been a little bit of a bachelor for the last week. My son lives at the house, and his girlfriend. They do some cooking. I'm hanging in there.
Yeah.
I'm not much of a cook, but I can get stuff done. So I've eaten a lot of hot dogs. A couple of pizzas.
Yeah.
So anyway, that'll be grandchild number 2. So with any luck, it'll happen real soon.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't know if that's a call for us at all, but let me get this phone line cleared.
Sure.
Out. Good morning. You're on WDXE with us.
Yes, I'd like to put my daughter, Samantha Hardesty, on the birthday club, please.
Samantha Hardesty. We'll wish her happy birthday, okay?
Thank you.
Samantha Hardesty. Yeah. That's a leftover. We don't have a birthday club anymore like we used to.
Oh, okay.
But we do wish people happy birthday.
Gotcha.
Samantha Hardesty. So
Gotcha.
There we go. All right.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Listen, I want to tell you we had a seminar. I think we talked about it. No, I had it last Saturday.
Yes.
So it would have been after
Yes.
the show last Friday, and it was over at the Star Theater, and it was a great bunch of people. I mean, it was a December seminar, which is usually less popular because it's the holidays, right? Stuff
Yes.
going on. But it was pretty good turnout for that, and I pretty much have announced that I'm not going to have another one for a while. I actually am having one in January. It's just not local. I guess when I said I wasn't going to have one, I sort of meant I'm not going to have one here in Lawrence County or Giles County until, well, I'm not sure when that next one is, but the next seminar I have is actually up in Franklin. And we go up there 2-3 times a year. We get invited up there.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, when I get invited, it's not like it's a closed group. It's open to whoever wants to come.
Right.
But that's on January the 13th, which is a Saturday. There's a place up there called Suite 501. I can give you the address next time I'm here.
Yes.
If somebody wants to go up there, or if you can hear me up there, and you want to attend it, I can give you the address so you can put it in your GPS and stuff. But it's a nice little venue, with the exception that it's capped at it's capped at about 50 people. The chairs and tables that they have holds about 50, which is about where we usually get attendance anyway. So it should work out. But if you're interested in that, just call my office and get on the RSVP list.
Sure.
And also, I want to mention to folks about, if you want to call in, we thought that was a call maybe, but we hadn't started talking about anything yet, so I was wondering what the question was going to be.
Yeah.
But, you can call in and talk to us and ask any question you want. 931, let me see if I can remember, 766-9393.
Very good.
Pretty easy number to remember, so call in and ask anything. I get calls all day long, and I told you my wife is out for the week. Well, I have another one of my staff is on vacation for a week, and another one of my staff left yesterday at noon for a long weekend because I give them paid vacation and they have a day or two left and they want to use it. So I'm literally a one-man show all day today. So most of them will be back next week, but I'll be answering the phone myself today. So
You're all
I'm
alone.
the only one there. So anyway, that's the next seminar coming up. But like I say, it's up in Franklin, but it's not too long of a drive.
Teresa and I were over on the Pulaski Square one evening a week ago or so, something coming back from somewhere. Anyway, it's beautiful.
Was it the tree lighting or the?
Well, the lights were already up. They were already up and going. And we just happened to come through, and I said, we got to drive around the square because they always decorate it up really nice over there in Pulaski. Our square has been really, coming on the up and up, too. We've got beautiful decorations here in Lawrenceburg. But Pulaski's courthouse is always lit up really nice, and it always looks great over there.
Yeah, it's real, almost Norman Rockwell looking.
Yeah,
know?
it is. Yeah,
and it's nice. And it's so nice to have an office right there on the square. So,
yeah.
But anyway, so, I was going to talk about today a little bit. I was just going to go over a couple of real life scenarios that came up.
Okay.
And plus, I have a handful of questions. I should have wrote them down, but I think I can remember them. There's a couple of questions that come up often.
Sure.
And I'd like to just address them because, we talk about a lot of stuff when we're on the show here. we talk a lot about foundational planning. And foundational planning is, writing a trust or maybe even a will if you think that's a better fit, about how to leave your property, after death and make sure it goes to the people you want, make sure it avoids probate, stuff like that.
Right.
Then we talk an awful lot about asset protection trusts. If we want to keep, during our life, we want to keep our property from being consumed by creditors, and the creditor most people are worried about is long-term care.
Yeah.
And then we also talk about 10 care planning, which is if somebody's in a facility or in care or headed there, we want to get them eligible for 10 care benefits. So we talk about all kind of planning. So, but I get questions that come up, certain questions, the same question comes up in one form or another over and over. I was going to go through some of those.
Sure.
But there was one thing I wanted to bring up, and that was, when I'm on the show, whenever we get a 10 care approval, I always mention, we got one of our approvals in this week, and I mentioned that. Well, there was one we have that we didn't quite get there, but I think we're going to be there real soon. Here's the backstory on it because I'm kind of proud of this one. It's sort of like a love-hate situation, or bittersweet. And I had somebody come to me with what I call a do-it-yourself application. They did it themselves, and it didn't go well.
Yes.
Because there's a lot to it, okay? It didn't go well, and then they got denied, and they were over-resourced. And they got denied, and then they didn't know what to do because they went and filed for the appeal hearing and weren't sure what to do. I remember what it was. They actually did the appeal hearing themselves, and they wouldn't let them talk because the person was not power of attorney. So it it didn't go well. And so they reached out to me because they were just at the end of the rope, didn't know what to do. And, when I take the do-it-yourself ones on, it's kind of like a fix-it mode. And, sometimes, you look at it, and sometimes you can't fix the reason they denied. Now, here's a situation where they said there was like $20,000 too much, over-resourced.
Sure.
Now, just because they tell us that doesn't mean we can go back now and do something with that money and say, okay, now we're good. Once they deny us for that reason, we can only appeal any decision that they made that was in error. And that is correct. He was over-resourced, right?
Yes.
So it's like, okay, this appeal is kind of frivolous. We can't win it. We can't win it. There's $20,000 too much. It wasn't dealt with.
Yeah.
So I made the decision to just scrap the appeal and file another application. Now, the downside of that is we lose all the time the original application was in effect.
Right.
But again, when it reached my wheelhouse, it was in that status already.
Yeah.
So we did the best we can. So the goal was to get this person eligible. So we filed a new application, and we did something with that over-resourcing, right?
Yes.
It actually was one of these IRA, 401k, kind of a tax-deferred funds is what it was.
Yes.
And so we have a tool for that. And we did. We converted all of that to an annuity that paid to the spouse. Okay, it worked great. And we did all that. Then we filed our application. Now we said, okay, we've got all these assets have been reduced, or we've done something with. What I talked about before. We changed everything from a countable asset to a non-countable asset. We kept it all. We kept all the money in the family, but we changed its status. And so then we send the application, and I was 200% confident that it would be approved. Well, about 4 months later, which is a little on the long side for 10 care. They're usually around 3 months is when we hear something.
Yes.
But about 4 months, we get a letter. It was a denial. A little bit surprising, but it's not all that surprising because they often deny inappropriately, or at least they do it a lot more often than you would think.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a common occurrence, but not you know what I mean. It's not a rare. Let me put it that way.
Sure.
So when that happened, I thought, okay, this is a little bit of a surprise. So I looked it over. I reran the numbers. I had a couple of members of my team. We reran the numbers together. We came to the conclusion that they were wrong. They were just wrong. They did not consider the annuity we bought.
Right.
And unfortunately, this denial did not tell us why, which is unusual for TennCare. Usually they have a sense or two. Now, they don't go into great detail, but they usually say you're denied because you were resourced for $20,000 or something. And this just said denied. And we called them and said, hey, can you give us a little more? And they said, well, we did that in the last denial. And of course, that was the first application, right? And it's like, yeah, but that's been changed. It's not the same circumstances. And of course, they didn't want to talk to us. They just said, well, I denied. You can appeal it. So sometimes they'll talk to you and try to work it out. Sometimes you'll get one just says, no, I've already denied, and so you have to appeal. So we filed an appeal because that has to be filed timely. And so we did, and we thought, all right, just as a parallel path, we're going to prepare another application where we're going to resource this person down below the amount they're even allowed to have. Now we know by law they have to make him eligible.
Right.
But we don't want to do that because, remember, we talked before about the community spouse resource allowance. The community spouse, the healthy spouse at home, was entitled to have a certain amount of money.
Right.
And we were down below the limits for that. And so we should have been eligible. But now we're going to go down below what they could even get just to guarantee eligibility, but it kind of put us in a position where we weren't keeping money for the spouse. Okay, so, but that was plan B. Plan A was the appeal, and I was confident we'd be successful. Well, we got that set, and I think the actual hearing date's a little later on in the month. Well, what happened was, I think it was just this week, Monday or so, got a call from a request, and this didn't come from the caseworker. This came from one of the attorneys. Okay, and the attorney said, could you please send us the annuity policy and the annuity documentation? And I said, sure. So we emailed it over to him. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, I thought the only thing we really changed was this $20,000 we did with an annuity. And when they denied us, it's like, how could that be? And I came to the conclusion the only way they could have denied us is if they didn't consider the annuity. But we made it clear. We put it in the application. Right. I can't see how they missed it. But now they're calling to look at it, which tells me if you read behind the lines, they're looking at it and say, oh, looks like they did do something here, and we got to relook at it. Right. So my hope, and I'm pretty confident that I will get a call or a notice that says, listen, we're going to scrap the appeal. We're going to approve the application. And what that means is now they'll go back. It's been 5 months now. Now they go back 5 months and pay the facility for those 5 months. And then we'll pull the application we just filed, which would have been the third application. We'll call in and say, all right, we're going to withdraw that application because you're going to approve the second one. Right. And, it was interesting because one of the first calls we got when we got this denial was the facility. And they're saying, all this time the patient's only paying their patient liability, which is their income, but it's a $9,000 bill, and they only got like $1,500 worth of income. So now that you've been denied, we got a tremendous bill here over the last 4 or 5 months, right? Right. And $30,000-$40,000.
Oh my gosh.
And so I kind of appeased them and said, look, the first level of appeal still gains us the status of application pending. So we don't have to private pay yet until we could get through the first level of appeal through the administrative courts. Right. And so they were happy with that, but they're a little nervous, and I guess I can't blame them. They're wondering how they're going to get paid. Right. So anyway, that was good news. I mean, I haven't got the answer yet, but it certainly seems to me that that's what they're doing. Amazing. And if we get the appeal, I just haven't got a clue what they can argue. But I mean, so our success rate on appeal is 100%. That's awesome. I've never failed to get someone eligible yet. That's awesome. Sometimes they dig their heels in. It's a little more work. Yeah. We've never failed to get someone eligible. But anyway, so that's kind of a real life scenario, and that's mostly on my end of it. The client, I keep them informed because they get a little nervous when they get a denial. Say, oh, good grief, we go through all this and now they're denied. It's like, well, that doesn't really mean that they're going to be denied. We have every single time gotten them to change their mind, or had the judge change their mind at the actual appeal. We pitch our case. So, anyway, I think that's good news. I think that's going to pan out for us. Right. So, because I've seen something similar happen in just a few days after we send them what they want. They just kind of throw in the towel and say, "Look, you're right," where the caseworker was wrong, and it's not unusual. The caseworkers are not correct. So that was.
I had a thought as you was telling this. You're dealing a lot with the nursing homes, and of course, TennCare paying the nursing homes, and what's happening with this circumstance. Does TennCare does it apply to assisted living that's not necessarily nursing home, but assisted living facilities that are maybe a step up where, and I'm thinking of the Summit here locally and some other places like that, Keystone maybe, and some other places that have assisted living, but not necessarily nursing home.
Gotcha.
Does that help? I mean, am I asking the right question?
Yes, you are, and I'm going to give you the right answer.
Okay.
Yeah, the Summit is a grand one. That I think it's Patty Odom that runs that over there.
Yeah.
I get there, and I don't deal a whole lot with the actual facility. I mean, I communicate with them by telling them, hey, we filed this application, and we're doing this, and we're helping this client. But the reports I get, she's a wonderful person. That's a great place. Now,
yes.
But it is an assisted living facility. It is not what we call a full-skilled nursing facility.
Right.
So when you deal with TennCare has what they call choices, and they have 3 levels. TennCare choices level 1, 2, and 3. Level 1 is your full-skilled nursing facility. Okay. Number 2 is your assisted living.
Right.
Okay. Number 3 is like a home and community-based system. And it gets complicated because they're what they call waiver programs, but nonetheless, those are the kind of assistance they offer. The eligibility criteria for those things is for nursing home and assisted living is almost identical. There's just a few minor differences in qualifying. Okay. The home and community-based system, it's very similar, but not exactly the same. Now, full-skilled nursing facility, as you know, is I tell you the average cost around here is about $9,000 a month.
Yes.
Most of them change from about $286 a day to $305 a day. And now, when I say the average, it's based on the level of care.
Yes.
You have these things called ADLs. It stands for Activities of Daily Living. And I think there's 6 of them, feeding yourself, clothing yourself,
right.
toiletring yourself,
right.
Walking, stuff. There's 6 of them.
Right.
And if you need help with 2 or 3 of them, you qualify to be in a full-skilled nursing facility. Okay.
Yes.
So if you only need help with maybe 1 of them or 2 of them, that you don't need full-skilled nursing facility, but you could qualify for assisted living.
Yes.
Assisted living is a lesser level of care because the individual has more functionality, and they can do certain things for themselves, but not everything.
Yeah.
And so, in and again, I don't deal with the care that these folks give at the facility, but in a nursing facility, you have a room and you have the nurses that come in and they pretty much help you do the stuff you can't do.
Right.
And again, the cost is based on how much care you need. If you can't do any of the ADLs, the cost is going to be higher.
Right.
If you can do some of them and all of them, the cost is a little bit lower. So it's based on the cost of care. And they determine that when you first go in, they do something called a PAE, pre-admission evaluation, and that determines the level of care, and the level of care determines the cost. So, but if you can still do stuff for yourself, except for a couple of things, you can qualify for assisted living, and TennCare will pay for that.
Okay.
Like I said, there's a few differences, but for the most part, the criteria to qualify is identical. And they'll pay for it. Now, one of the differences is, when you are in assisted living, there's something called room and board. Mm-hmm. And then there's the medical end. Okay, they're 2 different things.
Right.
TennCare does not pay for the room and board. So what we try to do is get our income enough to pay for that, but they will pay for what they call the medical, which is the care that they do. But, I guess, I don't know that I kept up with the average on that, but the average typically is around $4,400, $4,500 a month for assisted living. Now, there's a third one called home and community-based system, and that's kind of like when you can get people to come in to the home a couple of times a week or like a shift, an 8-hour shift, 3 days a week or something. And that one, I don't get involved with that too much because it's not too hard to get, but they don't pay too much. I think they give you like $1,500 a month to spend on that. Mm-hmm. But I think maybe we've only dealt with that once or twice, and it's been a while. So if one of those walk in the door, I'm going to have to go back and review it to see the criteria. They don't change it much, but just to make sure. So your question was right on the money. That is you can shift the burden to the TennCare Bureau to pay for that.
Okay, I did not know that.
Yeah. And again, like what you pay for in a full-scale nursing facility, you pay the patient liability, which, like I said before, is technically your income. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's a few things we can deduct from that, but for purposes of understanding, your income goes to the cost of care. When you're in assisted living, what you have to pay or your income goes towards is this room and board part. It's kind of like the rent.
Yeah.
But and then so there are different levels of it. different levels of care, and of course the cost reflects the level of care. So
Right.
So yeah, good question.
Interesting. Very interesting. Well, I didn't know how that quite applied, but you answered that very well. I understand.
There was another thing that came up, and this is a question that comes up. So I'm just kind of today's just going to be like a little hodgepodge of things that come up, questions and stuff, kind of hit and miss all over. But when we do this eligibility process for people, we get them eligible for 10 care, and then they approve, right? And now you're approved, and now everything's just sort of clicking along. You're paying your patient liability every month, and 10 Care's paying the balance every month, and you're just hanging out, playing Parcheesi with the guys and just doing whatever, right?
Right.
And then what happens when you have what we call an after-acquired asset? Something comes in. Now, typically, it can come from a variety of sources, but typically it's like an inheritance or something like an elective share from a deceased community spouse or an inheritance from someone else. Well, we had a case where we just got approved about 2 or 3 months ago, maybe not even that long, 2 months ago. Got approval, and lo and behold, we have this like $500 or $600 check that arrives, and it's a refund from a homeowner's policy. Okay.
Oh, really?
And insurance companies will do that. If somehow they get overpaid, they'll typically refund it. So, but we didn't even know it was out there. The person didn't even have a home, and so anyway, this check arrives post approval. Now, we talk about making your assets non-countable, but you're still allowed to have $2,000 of countable. Right. So we usually have a bank account that's got something like, I like to keep it around $1,600, $1,700, $1,800. I don't like to be on the ragged edge of eligibility. I don't want to keep exactly $2,000 in there.
Right.
And so in this case, we had about $1,700 in the bank.
Yeah.
And this check comes in for $600. Let's say $500.
Yeah.
And of course, now that's going to put us over the eligibility limit.
Right.
Okay. Now, a lot of people will say, well, that's not a big deal. And it might not be. That's okay. When you get to the next 12-month redetermination, they'll just make you do something with that money. Now, I take a different approach. And we just spent probably a month or more, spent a lot of time, energy, and effort getting this person approved.
Right.
And this money's coming in, and it's affecting it could affect the eligibility.
Yeah.
That's a big deal to me. I do not want to mess with eligibility.
Right.
Not at this point. Not now that we've got it. I don't want anything to jeopardize that. Now, the family asked me, could we use that money and buy gifts for the grandchildren for the applicant, for the applicant to buy gifts for the grandkids? And I said, probably. But I don't want to mess with it because there's nothing I can find in the statute that says you can't do that. But what I do find in the statute that if you buy gifts for other people that you don't get a benefit from, those are divestments. Okay. So we talked a lot about divestments.
Right.
If you give a divestment, they're going to hold that against you. And I said, let's not do that because if they want to dig their heels in, they could. Now, would they? Probably not. There's a certain number that kind of gets their attention. It's basically anything over $400.
Yeah.
If you give away $200, they just don't care because it's too much to keep up with.
Yeah.
But technically, it's a divestment. I thought, if it can affect eligibility or potentially affect eligibility, it is not worth it. So I said, let's do this. We're $200 over the account. Before the month is out, let's go buy stuff for mom. Let's buy her soap. Let's get her a new pair of pajamas. Let's buy consumables for $200 worth. Right. Now. We're allowed to have $2,000, right?
Yeah.
So if we're allowed to have $2,000, we can do anything we want with it. We can save it. We can spend it. We can spend it on a good purpose. We can spend it on a silly purpose.
Yeah.
We can go gamble it away. We can do whatever we want with it. So let's spend that $200 on mom, get them below the $2,000. Then let's use what we got to go buy the gifts for the kids because now it will never affect eligibility.
Okay.
And they can never go back and say, well, you gave these gifts to the kids. $200 of that was above it was an actual resource of yours.
Right.
That's a divestment. It's going to trigger a penalty, and now we're post approval, and that's a real monkey wrench in the works. So don't want to do that. So anyway, that was the advice.
So
we
you
gave.
could spend that money on the consumables for the patient.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Those are always allowed.
Okay.
What you're doing is you're turning a countable asset into a non-countable, tangible personal property.
Okay.
And so you can use it for that. Another thing you can do, there's several things you can do, but at that point we typically wouldn't have any, but you could pay off debt.
Oh, okay.
I died with somebody that got qualified, and they had a home. It was like a mobile home, and there was an outstanding debt on it, and the debt exceeded its value. In other words,
yes.
Okay, so
I'm familiar with that.
So it's certainly, yeah. So it's not a resource, right? It's
Yeah.
actually a debt. And a debt, you don't have ownership in anything when you have a debt. So we get this person qualified, and the family contacted me after approval and said they had a buyer for the home. What do we do? And so my first approach is this: well, what is the amount they're offering to pay versus the indebtedness? Okay, so let's say it's a $30,000 debt. If they're offering to pay $20,000, I'd say, okay, if you want to sell it, sell it. Take the $20,000 and put every penny of it toward the debt.
Right.
Now, no harm, no foul. We can always pay for debt. And the reason they let you pay for debt is, one, they want to encourage that, and two, the patient doesn't end up with the money.
Right.
And now, but if it's $30,000 debt and they're offering you $35,000, then we have to do something. We take 30 of it and pay off the debt, but we got to do something with the overage, the over resourcing.
Right.
So before we sell it and collect this check, we want to have a plan in place. So as soon as we get it,
Right.
then we can start doing something with it. Don't get it now, then ask me what do we do? Because if it's in that account on the first day of the next calendar month, it is a resource. Okay, so a lot of things can happen that come out of nowhere sometimes, and
Interesting.
It's always the same basic fundamentals to
Right.
resolve these issues. It's just
Right.
sometimes you can't see it.
Yeah.
But anyway, those are a couple things that came in. Now, some of the questions that I get, in both TennCare planning as well as foundational planning, and one of them is I get a lot of questions about real estate.
Oh, yeah.
That's what you do. And,
Yeah.
And the reason that we get a lot of questions about real estate is that is usually a large, if not the lion's share of people's estate.
Sure.
And so people want to know if I put property in a trust, does that restrict me from doing anything? Okay. Now the answer is no. Well, it depends on the type of trust. But if we put in your basic revocable living trust, you can do whatever you want. You can put it in, you can take it out, you can sell it, you can do anything you want. It is literally seamless to you as the owner. The only difference that I can say exists is now instead of dealing with the house as the individual owner, everything you do with the house is in your capacity as trustee of the trust.
Right.
But it's the same thing. You know what I mean? If you want to sell the house, sell the house. You're just selling it as the trustee. You want to buy a new house, buy it, put it in the trust. And you're just buying it as the trustee of the trust. If you want to give it away, give it away. That's the big difference. You are acting as a trustee, but it's absolutely seamless. You don't get any advantage or disadvantage by putting it into the trust. I mean, you do get an advantage because once it's in trust, you get what trusts do and pass the property probate free, at death, and you can put in their terms and conditions on how you can pass the property, stuff like that. But I mean, there is no detriment to doing it. Now, as opposed to the other trust we do, the asset protection trust,
Yes.
that's one. Once you put it in that trust, it kind of has to stay there. Now you can still sell it. Remember we talked about that.
Right.
We said you can sell it. The money you get for it just has to stay in the trust.
Yes.
So now you got to think of it not so much as the house, but as an asset, and this asset has value. So if you have a $500,000 house, let's not wrap our head around the fact that it's a house. Let's think of it as a $500,000 asset. Its posture doesn't mean anything. If a $500,000 stays in the trust, it's always creditor protected. So if it changes from real estate to money back to real estate again, or from money to gold or
Right.
stock, that's fine. It just has to stay in the trust to be creditor protected the whole time. So little different, but again,
Okay.
almost seamless to the individual. So
Quick question.
sure. Real estate question, right?
Well, real estate trust question.
Okay.
Trust question. Are there things? Of course, we talk about funding the trust, putting your assets in the trust.
Correct.
Whether it's an asset protection trust or elsewise. Are there things you cannot put in the trust?
Well, property is property.
Right.
Okay? You can put all property, any property, into a trust.
Okay.
Now, some property we don't put into a trust. It depends, because when you put property into a trust, you have to own it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what if you own something, but it's a beneficiary-driven kind of instrument? Okay, let's take life insurance,
Okay.
term life.
Okay.
There's several kinds of life insurance, but the most common is term.
Right.
You can have whole, where you actually have ownership. But let's take something like term life insurance. You have no ownership in term life insurance.
Okay.
You only have a death benefit, but you have to die for that to pay to whoever your beneficiary is.
Right.
If you have term life and you call them up and say, "Hey, what's the cash surrender value of my term life?" They're going to say nothing.
None.
There is none.
There is none.
And a term is, if you survive the term, all those premiums is money that just went. People can say, "Well, it's money out the window." Well, you had the insurance if something did happen before the term expired.
Right, exactly.
But once you reach the term, I mean, then it's gone. There's nothing there. Now, there's ways to convert it to partial whole life and stuff at that point.
Sure.
But nonetheless, so we don't have any real ownership in that. So, but we can make the trust the beneficiary. So that the death benefit goes into the trust at our death. And then the trust can control who that goes to.
Okay.
Or if you have something else that you own, I mean, we put stuff, if you own a debt, we do this every now and then. Somebody has a note that they hold. And that represents income to the person. The person, you know, if the person wants to put that in the trust can own the debt versus the individual. So if you own it, you can put it in the trust. Now, as far as there's something we cannot put in the trust, there are some things that maybe, depending on the kind of trust it is, it may not be the best solution to put it in the trust. And so one of the assets we treat differently than other assets are these deferred funds, like IRAs or 401ks. They're a little different. They changed the law on these in Tennessee back in 2019. And so we don't typically put those into the trust. You can, but you'd have to cash it out and put the net tax money in the trust.
Right.
But in the posture as the deferred funds, we typically don't do it. We have a couple other tools that we deal with that, which is not the trust. But that's the only one that we don't like to put in there. But any asset can go in there. Like people say, well, can I put this in? Can I put that in there? Like I said, stop thinking about what the asset is and just think of it as an asset. If it's an asset that you own, we can title it to the trust.
Right.
Even the stuff that has no title. Your pots, your pans, your tables, your chairs, your house is polluted with stuff that's, it's your stuff, right? We call it your stuff. Now, you can't prove you own that stuff. You own it by possession. You own it because you possess it and nobody else claims it. That's all. That's real personal property 101 in law school, first year. You got all this stuff, and how can you prove you own it? How can you prove, how do you own that shirt you're wearing? You own it because you possess it and nobody else claims it.
Right.
And you might be able to say, well, I could say, you can't prove you own it. You can say, well, I can show you the receipt where I bought it. And I'll say, well, that shows you bought it. Doesn't mean you own it.
Yeah.
You own it because you possess it. You ever hear anybody say possession's 9/10 of the law?
That is correct.
That's where this comes from. It's an odd form of ownership.
Yeah.
And it is a moment in time. So what do I own by possession? Everything I own right this very moment, I own by possession, is in my trust. Because we do an assignment of personal property to a trust. And it's less than a full page document.
Wow. Okay.
So the thing that really seems the most onerous to put into a trust is really kind of the easiest thing. Because I have people say, do I got to sit down and make this gigantic list or this Excel spreadsheet of everything I own, the pencils, the pens, the tables, the chair? The answer is no. What we do is we assign to the trust everything we own by virtue of possession. This is a good question because I'm going to spend a couple minutes on this.
Yeah.
Because it's an odd concept.
It is.
And so we say everything you own by virtue of possession is in the trust. And it reaches into the future. Meaning, let's say you do a trust, Jeff, and you put all your stuff in it. And
all my stuff.
2 years later, or sometime later, you go to Walmart or you go somewhere and you buy a big old 100-inch TV screen or something, okay? You're loading it in the back of your pickup truck and you say to yourself or you say to your wife, we need to take this down to Stan's office and get this put in our trust, right? Mm-hmm. The answer is no. Take it home, hang it on the wall, and possess it. It's in the trust. So what we're talking about is everything you own by possession. If something happens to you, okay, we're going to fast forward, something happens to you.
Yeah.
If there's a snapshot in time when something happens to you,
right,
and everything you possess at that moment in time is in your trust. That's what I mean by reaching into the future. If something comes in and goes out, let's say something's in your trust when you make the trust, but then it leaves or something, you no longer possess it there. It's no longer something you have that's in the trust. So it's a weird concept to own something by possession. But it's been the common law for, way back as far as you can remember.
I guess how else would you really determine that?
I mean, the concept has arisen even in scriptures or before.
Sure.
You want to research that, you're going to get your feet wet crossing the Jordan River.
That's right.
That's right. You own something because you possess it. Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty cool in a way.
Interesting.
But that's an interesting concept because people think, how does all that stuff get put into a trust like that? Do you have to list it? Now, is it a good idea to list it? I don't know. I hear people that take pictures of everything for insurance purposes. I think that's probably a good idea.
Probably a good idea, yeah.
I got a garage full of tools, and if somebody came and stole all my tools, and the insurance company said, "All right, tell us what you're out, and we'll buy you new ones," I don't know that I could do it, right? Because it's just a lot, and I don't know that I have it.
Yeah.
But maybe taking pictures of everything would be a good idea.
Probably.
So
and
I mean,
and there are people that have done that, and thankful that they did.
I have people that do that and then put the pictures in their trust.
Yeah, that's
Stuff like
interesting.
that. And now the same thing applies if you want to leave that personal property to somebody. You have to say what it is and who it goes to.
Right.
But not all of it.
Sure.
There's some stuff you can't even give away.
Yeah.
My house is full of it.
Yeah.
Every nook and cranny's got something in it.
We've all got stashes of stuff that we really don't even know what to do with.
It's important to me, but after I'm gone, they're going to say, "Why did he keep all this stuff?"
I've just gone through an office remodel and and I've been in my office for several years now, and I've accumulated a lot of stuff. And trying to get rid of stuff, I find it difficult to get rid of something.
I know.
Now, my wife is not that way. She can get rid of it in a heartbeat. But
I hear you.
But I kind of cling to things. It's tough for me.
I learned a lesson, and I finally learned it. But for years, I would have something. And I'm a big builder. I like to create and build. Yeah. And I have something I think, well, that's useful. There's no reason to throw it away. I might need that someday, and I'm going to hang on to it. So I do.
Yeah.
And it seems like every single time, 10 years later, I think, I need that. I remember saving one. I go in the attic, I find it, I pull it out, and you know what I do? It's perfectly good. I saved it for 10 years if I ever needed it. Now I need it. I look at it and say, you know what? This is 10 years old. I'm just going to buy a new one. And I've done that so many times that it has finally gotten through right side the brain to left side brain. That when I get it and say, I'm going to keep this on. I need it again. It's like, no, because when you need it, you're just going to say, get a new one.
Yeah.
And so I'm starting to throw stuff away from the beginning, but I've done that for a long time.
I'm a little better at it than I used to because of my wife. She's helped me with that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So hey, I mean, we're about 3/4 through the hour, but let me just throw the number out there again. We're talking about just whatever is kind of a hodgepodge day.
That's right.
If you have a hodgepodge question, feel free to call 931-766-9393 and throw it out there.
Yeah.
If I can't answer it, I'm sure Jeff can.
Well, yes.
Two heads are better than one.
I'm beginning to learn a little.
That's right.
Yes, I'm beginning to learn a little.
I tell some folks that some of the people on my staff, when they're learning certain things, especially when we deal with TennCare, I tell them, I said, it gets kind of scary when you start to understand it.
Yes.
It's like, wow, I'm starting to get it now. And it's kind of weird.
Well, it puts a responsibility on you too, because you begin to understand the responsibility you have for your assets and for your family. And let's see if we got a call. We do got one coming in here.
I never heard of it.
Good morning. Good morning. You're on WDXE with us.
Yeah, ask Mr. Stan. I'll hang up and listen to the answer. If you just been on a disability Medicare like for 15 years and you're 83 years old, how many days do you have that the Medicare will pay in a rest home? And I'll hang up and listen.
Okay, I think I understand.
Okay.
If I don't, call back if I did get it wrong. But I think the question is this: now, I'm not sure how the disability works in, but let me see if I get this right. If you go into a facility, a nursing facility, he said rest home, but I think that's what he's talking about, nursing facility, will Medicare pay for that?
Yes.
Now, let me back up a little bit because I think he's talking about when we say disability, here's what typically happens, probably 95% of the time. Somebody gets hurt or gets sick. Okay, you have an accident, you fall and get hurt, okay? Or you get sick and you go to the hospital, all right? Medicare calls this a spell of illness. That's the term for it. So you have this spell of illness, which, like I said, let's say you fall and break your hip. Okay, you go to the hospital. They either fix your hip or give you a new one or whatever they do, right? And you're in the hospital for 3 days. They call it 3 midnights, and then they would discharge you to a nursing facility to rehabilitate.
Right.
And the reason they do that is, it's thousands of dollars a day to rehabilitate in a hospital, and they don't have the room.
Right.
But it's only hundreds of dollars a day to do it in a facility. So they send you there because you got this broken hip and you got to rehabilitate. Now, same thing would be with sickness like a stroke. After you have a stroke and they take care of you and they give you the clot buster stuff and whatever they do, if you have some loss of functionality or some paralysis, you got to rehabilitate to see if you can recover some of it. So they send you to these facilities for this rehabilitation. And now, I guess the question was how many days will they pay for when you do that? Because they will. Medicare, the insurance, not Medicaid, Medicare will pay for that because it's rehabilitation. They'll pay for the hospital bill and they'll pay for your stay in the nursing home. And now they can pay for up to 100 days. They will not pay over 100 days. By law, by statute, it's capped at 100 days. Now, I often tell people it's up to. That's important language in the statute because it doesn't have to be 100 days. That's not guaranteed. Now, in my experience, I find out they are somewhat generous with the 100 days, but it's not always.
Right.
And here's why it's not always. If you, let's say it's a broken hip, you go, you're taking your PT once a day or whatever, and you're doing well, and you do rehabilitate. Okay, they report on a weekly basis to Medicare. And if all of a sudden the doctors and the PT therapists say things like, okay, he's got his gait back, he's walking like a champ, it's just like his new hip is working good, he's got the hang of it, and we're on day 40, okay, they'll say, he's rehabilitated. So Medicare say, okay, you're rehabilitated, we're going to stop paying. Now you can go home, right? Because you've rehabilitated, right? So this is not long-term care that they're paying for. It is rehabilitation. Now, like I say, it can be up to 100 days, and the things that terminate that are rehabilitating. 2, if you plateau. I see this happen sometimes with stroke victims. They rehabilitate, and the report is, okay, we've been doing PT every day, and for the last 2 weeks now, they just aren't getting any better. And it's our medical opinion that they're probably as good as it's going to get. Yeah. So they're not rehabilitated, but rehabilitation is no longer helping. And so they will stop it then. Now, surprisingly, another way they will stop it, which I think is how should I say it, kind of a low-down thing to do, but I get it. It's money, right?
Right.
If you refuse physical therapy, I think it's twice, they'll drop you.
Oh.
And it's unfortunate because I hear people say, they come in and say, hey, Aunt Gertrude, it's time for your PT. And she says, I just don't feel very good today. I don't want to do it. I'm just not up for it.
Yeah.
And they say, that's fine. And then they mark it as a refusal.
Yeah.
Because she didn't do it.
Yeah.
And after 2 of those, they're going to say, look, we'll pay for rehabilitation, but if you're not going to do it, we're not going to pay for it. And they'll terminate that.
Oh, wow.
So, so the question is, how many days will they pay? It's up to them. Mm-hmm. But it can be up to 100, and it's based on what you're there for, the rehabilitation, and how you're progressing along.
Right.
So now, some people, the people we see it usually go the 100 days for is if, let's say, you have a stroke, and it's kind of a bad one, and you're rehabilitating, and you got some paralysis, and now you really can't do several of the ADLs now because of this paralysis. Right. And it pretty much looks like even when the 100 days finishes, you're going to be staying there. Okay, those are the ones that kind of go to the 100 days because they're just not rehabilitating, and then after the 100 days, now we're in private pay because that's all they'll pay is 100 days. Now, if we know that period of time while Medicare is paying is a prime opportunity to do the stuff that we do to get qualified, because getting qualified doesn't happen overnight. When we have to deal with these assets and convert them around, it takes time, because usually we have to, like these annuities or these 401ks or insurances, we have to deal with these third-party financial institutions. Sure. And no matter how much I don't do it anymore, but if I beg and plead with them and tell them it's time critical, we need this as fast as possible, I get, our policy is it'll take 7 to 14 days or whatever they say, and they don't move any faster than that. Yep. They won't do it for me. They won't do it for you. They won't do it because Aunt Gertrude's in the home and she's stuck private paying and we're bleeding to death financially. They have their policies. Now, some of them are faster than others, but some of them, if I could reach through the phone, I could just wring somebody's neck. I swear to gosh. And the time frames some of them give me are so unreasonable. Yeah. They'll say, Aunt Gertrude is incapacitated, so you have to send me her son's power of attorney. And we need 7 to 10 days to have the legal team approve that. And it takes a week. So we're 7 to 10 days into it before they'll talk to us. Yeah. Okay. So now we call them and they say, okay, we approved it. And a lot of times I do this where it's on the speakerphone and the POA is with me. Yeah. And they say, okay, I'm POA and I'm in the office here with Mr. Pierchoski, my attorney, and you have my permission to let him ask questions and answer them. Okay. And so that's what they need. So I ask questions. I say, okay, how much is this thing? And they say, okay, it's $20,000. Yeah. Okay, what's the actual surrender value? And they tell me. I say, okay, we want to file a full surrender without withholding. Can you send us the surrender forms? Yes, I can. How long? Okay, sometimes they can email those. Yeah. But if they mail them, okay, it'll take a week or 10 days to get them in the mail. Right. Then when I send the surrender forms in, what happens? Well, it takes 14 to 20 days for the legal team to look it over and cut the check, and then we mail it. It takes another 7 to 10 days to get the check in the mail.
Yeah.
Then if you go to your local bank sometimes with the check, they'll say, we got to hang on to it for 5 days, make sure the fund's clear. I mean, the next thing you know, we can build up a month in this thing. So my point is, if we know we're going to be there after the 100 days and we're in a window where Medicare is paying the bill, that's a time to be doing this stuff because we're not private paying,
Right.
or at least as long as we can go without private paying.
Right.
Sometimes I get a call for somebody that they hadn't been there 10 days into the 100 days, and they know they're not coming back.
Right.
And so we start. And some people call me and say, hey, it's Friday,
Yeah.
Wednesday next week, and 100 days run out. Well, what can we do? It's like,
Right.
well, not much in that time, but we can do it. We can get them qualified, but we're going to run into some private pay because we can't.
Right.
Well, it depends on the assets, but
Sure.
most people's assets we have to.
Yeah.
There's some dealing with.
Sure.
We had one where we had this one asset. And I swear to gosh, it was so frustrating to me, especially to the POA.
Mm-hmm.
We had one single asset that left that we had to deal with, and we called them and they said, I sent you the surrender forms. We emailed them to you.
Yeah.
3 days later, we call back. How long? We should have got them. It's email, right?
Yeah.
Should have got them in an hour.
Yeah.
We still don't have them. Well, let me check and see. Well, I see where we sent them, and I said, well, listen, lady, I'm telling you, I'm looking at my email. I'm looking at the junk folder, and I'm looking at the promotions folder. You did not send it.
Yeah.
Well, let me send it again. And it's just, I don't know what it is. I think they have your money, and they're making money with it, and they're
Yeah.
very reluctant to give it back. But some of them, there was one place we called, and the person said, yeah, we can have that turned around, and we can have the check to you in 4 days, or something like that, very quick.
Yeah.
I said, would you please do me a favor? And they said, what's that? I said, would you call New York Life and Transamerica and explain to them how you do something in 4 days that takes them 3 weeks?
Yeah.
Would you please do that for me? So it depends on the institution, but some
Right.
can be timely and some can just, like I said, you can just wring their neck. They take so long. So,
Yep, I've had some. Well, I won't even go into the experiences with a TV service that I wanted to try to cancel.
Yeah.
It took forever.
Yeah. Well, I hope that answers the gentleman's question.
Yes.
If not, he can call me. But we're getting close to the end. But maybe next week, call and ask it again.
Yeah.
But I think that's where he was going with it.
Yeah.
So, and it's an important thing to know.
Yeah.
What's important to know is if you get in that position and somebody's there and you're in the Medicare window, that's the time to give some serious thought as to what's going to happen at the end of this rehabilitation, at the end of this spell of illness. And now, the other thing that can happen is if you do rehabilitate and go home.
Yeah.
People ask this question too. Let's say you break your hip, you get your gait back, you're in there 40 days, 50 days, you're walking like a champ. So they say, you know what, you rehabilitated, you can go home. And you go home. No need for you to be in a facility because you don't need help with the ADLs,
Yes.
right? If it happens again, you fall again or get sick, if there's 60 days in between the two,
Right.
they'll do it all over again.
Yeah.
They'll pay up to 100 days again. If it happens a week later, no. But if you got to have this spell of illness, you got to have a 60-day window between the two. And if you do, then they'll pay all over again.
Wow.
So, again, if you get some folks that are susceptible to falling, and it seems like every time they call me, Dad fell or something, and it's been a week later or 2 weeks later. If you can stay out for 60 days and then go back in, you get the advantage of Medicare paying all that. So
Okay.
But yeah, those are
Gosh, there's so many things. There's
Yeah.
so many avenues. If I've learned, well, let's see. We got a phone call coming. Let's see who's on the talk.
we can probably squeeze one in.
Hey, good morning. You're on WDXE with us.
Yes, I was wondering who won the birthday club this morning.
Oh, hun, actually, we don't do the birthday club. We just wish them happy birthday. That birthday club
Oh.
ended, okay?
Okay, thank
Thank you. Yeah, very good.
Well, it wasn't me because it wasn't my birthday. Probably,
your birthday.
probably the main reason.
What I was going to say is if I've learned anything talking with you is early planning is best.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Early planning is best on all of this.
It's kind of like the word
on all fronts.
The word planning implies doing something ahead of time, right?
Yes.
And that is very helpful. Now we can do a lot at the 11th hour.
Yes.
But it is usually somewhat frantic or limited or something. It's always a little bit easier, a little bit smoother, the more we have time to.
Well,
build
it could
into
cost you too.
It sure can.
It can cost you a lot.
It sure can.
Unnecessarily if you do it ahead of time and make the proper plans and do what you've been advocating for since we started, is get the estate planning started.
And, this do-it-yourself stuff. Now, I've never been one to say, yeah, you have to have an attorney to do stuff. There's certain things in the law you can do yourself.
Sure.
There's certain things you can do yourself, but maybe not a good idea. if it's something, and the only reason some of this stuff is not good to do is because it's riddled with rules, duties, deadlines, stuff like that. And if you don't know that, you don't get any slack. If you get into court, the court's not going to say, well, Jeff, I know you're what we call pro se, you're not an attorney, so you got close. It wasn't quite right, but we'll cut you some slack because it was good enough. Yeah. I mean, that's an unfair tort to your opponent, right? Because he's held to the rules. Yeah. And now they're getting you some slack because you didn't meet the rules. And though the court will be the first to tell you can do whatever you want on your own, but you don't get any kind of a free ride anywhere. We're going to hold you to the standard of what anybody else in here would have to do. Right. And they have to for that reason. Right. So, I had somebody in my office that kept saying, what's wrong if Dad just writes it all out and gets, signs it, gets it notarized? What's wrong with doing do-it-yourself will like that? And I said, well, that would be a fatal will, And now they're like, well, how do I make it a real will? And you put me in a difficult position because if I'm sitting here giving legal advice, and if I give legal advice, then I'm responsible for it. On this radio show, I don't much give legal advice. I just talk about how things are. Right. But if I tell you how to make this will legal and you go home and try to do it yourself and don't get it right, that can come back on me, okay? Sure. Now, if you want me to make the will for you, I can guarantee I'll make it a valid will. Right. But I mean, so I talk about wills all the time and how strict compliance is what we have to have with those. If you don't do it exactly the way the statute says, they will nullify it. Yeah.
Let's see, we got a phone call. Good morning. You're on WDXE with us.
I don't even hear the phone ring.
Hello. I don't know what that is.
I didn't even hear it ring. How do you know?
Well, I've got the ringer turned off. I can see the lights.
Gotcha. Well, listen, we're wrapping it up. So let me just touch base again on the seminar coming up. I'll talk about it again in the next couple of Fridays, too, is January the 13th, which is a Saturday, 10 o'clock in the morning. That's going to be up at Suite 501 in Franklin. Yes. A little ways up the road. But if you're up north of Lawrenceburg and listen to that, that might not be a bad one for you to go to. So,
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So go to that. So if you want to talk to me, anything about foundational planning, anything about asset protection planning or TennCare planning, anything that we do, feel free to call me at my office, 931-363-7222, or you can go to my website. You just have to put in estateplanstand.com.
Estateplanstand.com.
And there you can see my calendar and you can see when things are coming up. Yeah. You can ask your question by email that way, or if you don't get the phone number over the radio here, you can get the phone number there and call me.
Absolutely.
Today, don't call me today. I'm going to be up to my armpits and stuff. I'm all by my lonesome at the office, and so I got several meetings today. So I'll probably have forward the phone.
So today's the day I'm going to call you, Stan. Yeah. All right. What's that phone number again?
Today's the day. Half a dozen emergencies will come in. Right.
That's right.
931-363-7222, and hopefully I'll get some news about my grandson.
I hope so too. Stan Pierchoski, everybody. Always enjoyed it. Look forward to seeing you next Friday.
We'll see you next Friday. I will be here.
God bless, bud.
Fuel to the fire for House Republicans. I'm Dave Anthony, Fox News. A new Hunter Biden indictment. In addition to the felony gun case, now 9 federal charges.